Yeah, I'll step in here. And I'll reference my answers to the Western Balkans, which includes the 5 countries in the territory of Kosovo under UN Security Council resolution. And I think, for what my colleague said, there are issues of inefficiency, definitely. And I think the relationship between economy and environment is an interesting one. I think what's the drivers? I think, for many years it's been the integration into EU which has been the driver for better performance across the Western Balkan region. And certainly growth is needed for jobs and to raise capital for relevant government expenditures. But we find that, for many years the growth in the Western Balkans has been jobless growth. It's been growth that has come at the cost of lack of employment opportunities. So we have a large section of the population that's disenfranchised from productive activities. And I think that has considerations for the links between environment and economy, because unless you have a solid tax revenue base, how are you actually going to raise revenue for your public programs that seek to protect the environment? And also growth is going to increase environmental impacts because there's external drivers, and the answer to your question is yes. Are small open economies vulnerable to increasing unsustainable practice? I would say yes, and there's probably, I'd say, 5 key influencing factors that we need to be aware of. The first is trade flows. We have the ability, as trade becomes globalised, for the richer countries to be able to export their environmental problems to poorer countries, and it often comes at the cost of less developed countries. This we know as a fact. Second is foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment will often come with a less amount of, let's say, safeguards, depending on who the finances are, what the views are of foreign direct investment by particular governments. And often where you find vested interests, many of the safeguards can actually be lost altogether. We find the desire for EU enlargement to be coming to the EU as a principal source of destination goods as perhaps another driving factor of potential environmental consequences. We have a need to recognise that climate change impacts will definitely impact on Western Balkan countries in the future, particularly around issues of land degradation, water, severity of climate and those kinds of things. And I think the other thing is the need for large investments into upgrading technology and infrastructure. I think these are key issues. And on top of that, I'll just take a second longer, there's a couple of other internal ones I think need to be considered. There's a changing patterns of consumption and production, and the desire for modern goods is what is driving a lot of internal consumption in these countries. We have an issue of fairly weak national capacities in many of these countries as well. Once you get to government institutions, you have less of an ability for them to be able to manage the consequences of growth. Whilst there is a focus on finance and economic growth, the other issues of social development and national capacity and environmental protection are lost. And the last thing I just want to reference is the growing level of inequality in the Western Balkan countries. We find an increasing amount of income inequality, and there are certainly correlations between the level of inequality, income inequality in society, and a level of environmental sustainability. And by that I mean the greater the level of inequality, the greater likelihood there is for unsustainable economic growth to occur.